Greetings. I'm Detective Sergeant First Class Harry Gavel, retired Camden County Prosecutor's Office, Homicide Division. Pitchfork, Part 1. Listener discretion is advised due to the graphic nature of the content of this story. This is a story of a beautiful beginning of a young woman's life to her tragic end. Her life began in London, England, in the UK, and it ended in a South Philadelphia back barn stable in the city of brotherly love. It was Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Don't be fooled. It can be a very dangerous place, both in the dark alleys of Center City and in broad daylight at Liberty Square. In these modern times of existence, upwards of 500 people are murdered there each year. Some cases get solved, some do not. And sometimes the wrong person is charged, arrested, indicted, and locked away in prison with little or no hope of justice. I know of a homicide detective who let their short man syndrome ego feed their desire to be recognized as a standout. In time, the true, real deal cream of the crop will always rise to the top. The flawed ones who face consequences usually will never admit to their deficiencies. This is very rare. Usually, homicide detectives are carefully selected and proven to already be the elite. That's why they're chosen to join homicide. In the case I speak of, one detective who retired from Philadelphia and came to work in the Camden County Prosecutor's Office has cost the city of Philadelphia the most millions of dollars in unlawful incarcerations of persons charged and prosecuted for murder. That one detective alone broke the history of the city's record for payouts in unjustifiable, unlawful detentions in prisons for murder. This time, Dr. Libby Mae Breacher, known as Mae by her family and friends, walked into a perfectly unsuspecting trap, one which would end her life instantly. Far away from her home in Liverpool, England, far from her beloved parents, relatives, and friends, and out of the reach of her friend and favorite traveling companion, Mrs. Carrie Stella. She would die at the hands of a hunchback psychopath with a smile on her face and a beautiful red rose clutched in her fist, and with a heart filled with thoughts of finding love, perhaps in the city of brotherly love. The city would prove her wrong, dead wrong. Her childhood best friend, Carrie Stella, would be haunted by her disappearance, blaming herself for not making the trip with her. Her parents would be left completely destroyed and gutted. The police would be completely baffled. Yes, her name was Mae Libby Breacher. She was an only child born into privilege in Liverpool, England. Her parents were Mr. and Mrs. Archibald and Libby Breacher. Her father and grandfather had been in the commercial shipping industry for many years in various partnerships and businesses. Business adventures was none other than the famous Vanderbilt family. They were tycoons in the shipping industry when America was in its prime and infancy, really, during World War II, a time when costs were low and profits were huge. Mae wanted for nothing, ever. Not only was she rich, she was beautiful. A young, tall, blue-eyed blonde, a polished socialite. She had completed finishing school in London, England. She was a Harvard graduate and then on to medical school in the United States. Instead of accepting a medical residency at Hahnemann Hospital in Philadelphia in 1966, at just age 23 years old, she decided to enter the war effort and help the wounded and seriously injured troops who were fighting and dying in Vietnam. When she could not find the right volunteer program to suit her, she joined the United States Navy. After her training and advanced medical training, she was stationed in country, Saigon Base Camp, where she worked as an ensign, the equivalent of a second lieutenant naval doctor, and quickly found herself performing duties as a trauma surgeon. Dr. May Breacher truly loved her mission, but hated her job. It was understandable. She loved helping those in need, but hated to see the suffering, the losses, the tragedies. She lived for and loved the mission of being there to stop the bleeding and saving lives. However, she was keenly aware that she was mortal. She took to heart each and every poor soul who she could not save. May was just beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside. She was loved and revered as one of the very best of the best. On occasion, while attending an injured soldier, she would be asked to relay a message to a loved one in the event the soldier didn't make it. When that happened, she would be certain to relate that message in writing to her command so that it would be conveyed to the loved ones of that soldier. A solemn task which May took very seriously. She often allowed herself to imagine that the injured soldier was in some way related to her. In that, she found confidence that she would be doing all that she could medically to provide the very best care consistently to her patients, to save that life, that limb, that soul. Doctors, the good ones, are born, not made. It was the dead of winter, December the 12th, 1969. May was 26. The Vietnam conflict was raging. May was discharged from the military. She mustered out in Fort Riley, Kansas. After discharge, she returned home to Liverpool, England, where the war was left far behind, but not in May's heart. She could only muster up half of a smile on her beautiful face for quite a while to come. The sights and sounds of having a front row spot in a war-torn country in Asia where the Americans were fighting against communist rule, and she was up to her armpits in the blood of her brothers and sisters who were making the ultimate sacrifice and dying far away from home on foreign soil. This truth would always be with her. At least she was home for a long-needed rest at her parents' upscale flat in Liverpool, with plans to actually vacation in the coming spring at the family's retreat in the French Riviera area. The family owned a spectacular mansion there, complete with a small staff of caretakers and a world-class chef. The chef, Mimo Ataya, was the ringleader of the many good times that were always had at the mansion. He was a lively elf, an immigrant from Salerno, Italy. He stood about 5'6" tall, medium build, clean-shaven, and seemed to always be wearing a stylish chef's attire, which never matched his Jeff-style hat. A colorful scarf was permanent fixture artfully tied around his neck. He was a self-taught chef from both his mother and father. He was in charge of the caretaker staff at the family compound whenever they were not there. As a young lad in Italy, he was in charge of the sheep on their homestead, a stunning brick and concrete house which his father, older brother, and his uncles built on the side of a mountain. It was complete with an external spiral staircase which led to the entrance of the house. It has towers which added curvature at the corners of the structure, which made it appear as a small castle, as seen in the countrysides of Germany, the UK, and of course scattered throughout in Italy. It was complete with a full wine cellar, carved into the natural rock. If you will, deep below the home, solid rock foundation. Dynamite was actually used to create the perfect wine cave into the solid rock. It was painted a pale tan color, which blended perfectly as its Tuscan sun lit it up on a daily basis. His older brother, Pepe, had immigrated to America. He was a very successful New York restaurant owner who not only made pizza, but had a plant that manufactured large fire brick ovens, commercial ovens, which he sold all over the world. Mimo, when old enough, was brought to New York and worked in his brother's restaurant, where he became the head chef in very short order. As a young and upcoming chef, he had a very hard head. He was often fired by his brother, but often returned to work the next day and still did it his way. He would travel during off times around Europe, visiting relatives and learning new food menu items and presentations for the Breacher family and guests. He never disappointed. Chef Mimo never attended a school of culinary arts either. He spoke a pleasant rendition of broken English, Italian style. He would win your heart and at the same time put a pedigree chef in short pants quickly and in a hurry with his uncanny food selections, preparations, artistic Italian decoration, and unmatched tastes. May decided that she would plan the vacation to arrive on the last weekend in May, Memorial Day weekend. She always invited her best friend Carrie Stella. She and Carrie were inseparable as children and young adults. On this occasion, Carrie's schedule conflicted with May's vacation plan, so she opted to stay behind and help May's mother prepare for her return when the family planned to celebrate May's upcoming 27th birthday event. The long winter in Liverpool proved to be very typical. The rainy string of days and nights, the morning and evening fog, and the sounds from the harbor of large ships and barge horns bellowing through the fog in the wee hours of the day and into the night. In a comforting way, May found lying quietly in bed at night, hearing the horns from the harbor off in the distance, helped her fall asleep and very much reminded her of being home, safe and sound. It was her childhood home, after all. As children, she and Carrie spent many nights gazing at the stars while kneeling in front of her bedroom windows, dreaming of their future endeavors together. Those days were long gone, but the memories would never be. May's parents would occasionally bring up the subject of what May's thoughts were on a possible future of marriage, children, or where that ranked given her medical career. This, however, was not presented as you might think. It was a no-pressure topic at all. It was more of, we want whatever you want and whatever is best for you. May was always very astute, focused on her education and studies. Boys and dating were not her top priorities. She did, of course, dream of meeting Mr. Right someday, but wanted no part of any fix-up dates or friend of a friend situations, and definitely no interest in meeting a man in a pub. She was a person who believed in fate. If it was meant to be, it would happen. She was civic-minded, involved in various clubs and volunteer work, loved to travel, and had no trouble meeting new people in her social settings. She was no party girl. She believed in marriage, but very much so wanted it to happen naturally if it did happen. She believed that if it happened naturally, it would be most memorable and cherished forevermore. That's what she wanted. And then the caboose would follow the train. May dreamed of a true, real love story that would span her lifetime. She hoped that her beloved parents would live long enough to be able to watch her journey and love their children and grandchildren at the same time. She knew that she could not predict or control destiny. Chapter 2, Tick-Tock. The vacation at the mansion was much anticipated and greatly enjoyed. The family finally named the mansion Eternity, after the famed movie From Here to Eternity, released August the 5th, 1953, starring Burt Lancaster and Deborah Kerr. It was named From Here to Eternity because the front views of the mansion of the ocean waves crashing on the rocks of the French Riviera beach reminded her parents of that, their favorite American film, From Here to Eternity. It seemed the perfect name. May loved tanning on the beach under a large floppy hat with big trendy sunglasses, which May did not like because she thought they made her look like a snobby, spoiled, rich woman. Her real persona was quite the opposite. Yes, she was indeed quite rich monetarily. However, her fortune did not affect her personality. She was as down-to-earth and caring of others as they come. Carrie, on the other hand, was quite the firecracker. She was cute and feisty. If unwanted attention was being shown, she would not hesitate to say, "Piss off, you bloody bloke." It would always embarrass May, but it was what needed to be said at times, and May was far too polite to say it. They were the perfect team. They always had fun, laughed at each other's silly ways of talking secretly about people they observed in their travels, especially here on the beach, the French Riviera, where people watching was at its best. Some of the topless nudity always tickled them. May was a brilliant, skilled surgeon, a well-read conversationalist, a virgin as pure as the driven snow at age 26. All who knew her knew that she was someone special, a sincere person who could be counted on, a friendly soul with a heart full of compassion for all living things. She loved her parents, relatives, and friends alike. One of her favorite charities was supporting the Humane Society for Animals, Rescue, and Wellness. To know May was to love her, and she loved you back. Spring of 1975 had come and gone. It was now approaching the Indian summer on the east coast of the United States. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was beginning to burst into the beautiful colors of fall foliage. During her military tour, May had met Carmella Greystone, a young nurse in Vietnam that she worked with. Through conversation, she learned that she was from Allentown, Pennsylvania, and recalled her memorable visit to the Independence Mall and related tales of her trip where touring Old City in a horse-drawn carriage. It all sounded enchanting, exciting, and charming to May. May had planned this sort of historical trip to Philadelphia metropolitan area to visit Old City because although she was educated in Pennsylvania, she never got the chance to tour the Liberty Bell, Independence Mall, Betsy Ross House, and the rest. While they chatted in Vietnam, May could picture herself and Carmella in a white carriage drawn by a pair of beautiful white stallions, gallantly galloping down the cobblestone streets of Old City and hearing the clomping of their hoofs. This was a must-do adventure for May. Carmella had gotten out of the military several months ahead of May. They agreed to do it together as a threesome, but Carrie couldn't swing it. They set the date and the plan was born. It would prove to be the last time May would ever see her friend, or anyone else, for that matter, as she had but a few more precious days to live once September rolled around. May had no idea, nor any control. Only a hand of fate could change it now. No one yet knew, not even the Grim Reaper, cloaked in a black cape, a tried and true killing machine, just awaiting the next prey to walk into his chamber, or carriage, if you will, of death. The minute Carmella answered her phone, she informed May that since they were planning their tour of this October, the Headless Horse and Carriage Company was offering a haunted old city tour package, which included a free parking coupon and dinner voucher at the famous Bookbinders restaurant. That sealed the deal for May. It all sounded so exciting, and the itinerary was confirmed. It was set. May would not be meeting her knight in shining armor. Instead, she would be headed for a blind date with a hunchbacked, caped killer, Mr. Oliver Creel, a.k.a. the Hunchback of Center City, a stone-cold killer who was operating under the radar, quote unquote. He had a violent reputation with a mean streak. He was cunning and yet to be caught for his vulgar crimes. If only May could change it. The clock of destiny was now slowly ticking, sadly ticking May Breacher's life away. Chapter 3, The Carriage to Hell. Would it be Air France from LRH, London, or Royal KLM from ARH, London, to Philadelphia, PHL? Well, booking the flight to the city of brotherly love was gleefully underway. The ladies were busy chatting on what to pack, what to bring to wear, what not to forget, where to stay, which tour package did they want. Several packages were offered for various budgets. All of the details would be mapped out beforehand. May was glad she had the advice and insight of Carmella, who helped her guide her decisions to make the very best of the vacation. May's parents were well-known frequent flyers of Air France out of LRH. They knew most of the rotating flight crew, including the pilots. For this reason, May booked her flight on Royal KLM out of London to Philadelphia, mainly because she wished to fly incognito and meet her friend Carmella at the inn. May would book for the trip. Carmella was a Philadelphia native, born and raised. May wanted to fly without being made a fuss over or treated special. That was her nature. Her trip was slated to begin immediately after landing in Philadelphia on Memorial Day, May the 26th, 1975. May would also celebrate turning 27 years old while in Philadelphia. Her family and she planned to officially celebrate with her friends and family at the mansion on the French Riviera. The family would make the trip together upon her return home to Liverpool after her trip. Little did she know that would never come to pass. As the date to depart on her final journey was quickly approaching, May and Carmella stayed busy with their itinerary. Although the city offered several different venues for carriage tours, Carmella had chosen and booked a horse-drawn carriage ride through a company named, of all things, the Headless Horse and Carriage Company. The company offered one of the longest narrated tours of Old City, which promised to cover all of the historic places of interest and included ghost stories and visits to destinations of Philadelphia's haunted past would be told. With Halloween just around the corner, this sounded scary, spooky, exciting, and fun at the same time. They both couldn't wait. As scheduled, on September the 26th, 1975, May touched down at the Philadelphia airport, grabbed her luggage, hailed a taxi, and was whisked off and checked into a 140-year-old privately owned historical tavern, brewery, turned into a bed and breakfast located in the famous South Street waterfront harbor area of the city, just at the foot of the Delaware River. May chose this place by no accident. The inn was owned and operated by Dr. Thaddeus Bellingford, a medical doctor and professor. Bellingford happened to be one of the professors who lectured May on the subject of harvesting human donor remains at the university. The inn, named the Last Stop Inn, quote unquote, a B&B establishment, was also said to be haunted and has a resident ghost who still could be seen smoking a pipe in the courtyards during nights of the full moon. Since this trip was expected to be rich with haunting stories, this made it all the more intriguing to the ladies. Expectations of entertainment, May felt safe and secure by staying at the inn, where she very much knew and trusted the innkeeper. Sometimes all the safety precautions in the world can't save you from your fate. Can one change destiny? Only by one's own choices. Once settled, after a short chat session over a glass of champagne in front of the warmth of the fireplace with Professor B, a quick shower, change of clothes, and freshening up, the girls were out for their first leg of their planned night of fun in the city of brotherly love. May was as tan as a nut when she arrived in Philadelphia from her long, lazy, sun-baked afternoons, stretched out on the beaches of the French Riviera, clad in her very modest one-piece bathing suit. When you saw her, time stopped. You thought you were looking at a Hollywood movie star, trying not to be recognized, or at the very least, a top high-fashion model. She was a natural beauty. Although she disliked the big flashy sunglasses, her only reason she wore them were to help keep her from getting crow's feet from the blaring sun of the French Riviera. After all, she was a doctor. She tried to avoid health issues. It wouldn't be long before she caught the eye of an off-duty city beat cop, Officer Frank Crank, a.k.a. the Crankster, Shield number 75, Philadelphia police officer. He was moonlighting on a side gig at Bookbinders in Old City. He was assigned to parking control and security of the parked vehicles of the restaurant goers. It was Philadelphia, you know. As their cab pulled up to the restaurant, Frank had leaned briefly into the cab window and asked the driver if he was waiting or just dropping off, as to direct him where to go, as he noticed May and Carmella seated in the rear seat. He immediately focused on May's left hand. He saw there was no wedding ring, no wedding band. He was in disbelief. They had set an early 6 p.m. dinner reservation for Carmella and she at Bookbinders, so would have plenty of time to walk to their 8:15 p.m. appointment with Destiny. An appointment with the ghoul they would meet at the Headless Horse Carriage Company. They would walk 1 block from Bookbinders to catch their carriage ride to hell. In their thoughts, they were visualizing and anticipating their gleaming white horse-drawn carriage gleefully carting them over cobblestone streets in and around Independence National Historical Park on their haunted ghost tour of Old City, Philadelphia. It would prove to be quite haunting. The night was just about to tragically unfold. The hunchback would rear his ugly head very soon, as the two proper friends excitedly chatted over a splendid choice of the seafood dinner. Much to their surprise, their waiter, Raoul, came to their table with 2 shot glasses perched on a lime-colored tray, complete with a fancy white doily, and stated that with their permission, Officer Crank would like to buy them an after-dinner cordial of limoncello compliment. They both looked at each other. As the waiter gestured towards Officer Crank, they nodded their heads in acceptance as Officer Crank smiled and gave them the thumbs up, which would prove to be in vain. May was very used to being cordial during many attempts to engage her, and she was adept in being wary of strangers she knew nothing about. After dinner was completed, the pair was served their cordial, asked their waiter to thank the officer. All Officer Crank could do was hate to see them, especially May, go. However, he much enjoyed watching her leave. Arm in arm, they strolled the 1 block towards their prearranged meeting place for the much-anticipated carriage ride. As they turned the corner, they got their first glimpse of the beautiful white horse-drawn carriage. There it was, curbside, festooned with yellow carriage lights. Flowers adorned it. 2 large, pure black horses at the ready, hitched to the front of the carriage, with gorgeous feathers and ornamental trinkets affixed to their bridles. All that was missing was a handsome young prince in white shining armor, with a gold crown upon his head, holding a beautiful bouquet of red roses. As they approached, they were greeted by the driver of the carriage. He was seated, perched in the long black tuft leather-covered bench atop the carriage. When he turned slightly and observed May and Carmella, he attached his reins, stepped off of the carriage, bowed slightly at the waist as he introduced himself. The ladies were being greeted by a bulging-eyed man, short in stature, wearing a black top hat, a black leather vest, a black cape draped across his shoulders, wearing black rider's pants which flared slightly at the hip, high-top black boots laced through metal eyelets, holding a black braided rider's crop in one hand and his top hat in the other. A hunchback rising up between his shoulder blades could not be overlooked. At first glance, he reminded you of a cross between Peter Lorre, a credited actor who usually portrayed the villain in horror films, and Lon Chaney, also known as Quasimodo, the hunchback gentle outcast in the first film version of Victor Hugo's classic novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. The deformity on his back was obvious and protruding beneath his cape. The ladies were at first taken aback by his appearance, then chalked it up to all part of the theme ride which they signed up for, a haunted tour of Old City. The compassionate side of May made her feel a little sorry for the chap, if this was in fact his true appearance, and she wondered at the same time that his attire and appearance might very well be part of his costume. It was not every day that she or Carmella were accustomed to seeing men wearing capes. The odor of horse manure in the air as they approached closer was like a shot of smelling salts, bringing them both back to reality quickly as they focused on the ghoul now still bowing before them. If only her first gut instincts were followed at that moment to cancel. Oh, the what ifs. She was too nice and trusting for that. Allow me to introduce myself. Welcome to the Headless Horse Carriage Company. I am Mr. Oliver Creel, he explained with all the macabre he could muster. I am your carriage horseman and narrator for this evening's haunted tour of Old City, Philadelphia. Please step aboard, as he handed each of the ladies a bright red single rose. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Mr. Creel seemed friendly enough, as it were. In short order, the ladies began to relax as they settled into comfortable seats in the rear coach, but still clutching each other's hands, unsure of the sight and sounds they were now engaged, both quietly wishing the driver, with the roses in hand, were instead a handsome young prince. As the tour began, Creel explained that due to his birth defect, vis-a-vis his humpback, he called it his physical appearance, he found it very difficult to find work in the mainstream. Having always loving horses as a child, his job as a carriageman had become his passion. He explained that he had been driving carriages around the city now for many a year, as he assured them that they were with the best carriagemen in the profession. He was indeed their narrator of the tour and their host of the ghost stories of Old Town Philadelphia. Indeed, he did it all. Indeed. Chapter 4, Without a Hitch, or shall we say, a trace. The carriage tour kicked off without a hitch, no pun intended. It would be a 3-hour tour with a break at the hitching post and stable in the middle of it. The narrated historic part consisted of local landmarks like the Liberty Bell, Washington Park, Liberty Park, Betsy Ross's house, where the first American flag was sewn by Betsy Ross, etc. It was charmingly very interesting to both of them. It was full of personal stories of many of the framers of the Constitution of the United States, as well as the signers of the Declaration of Independence. May had a very good grasp and understanding of both topics, as she recalled studying about the Constitution and the rest while preparing to take her exams to become a United States citizen the year she turned 18, which she of course did in Philadelphia. Carmella was born in the United States and learned about it in her American history classes. Nonetheless, it was still interesting to have a refresher course with intertwined ghost stories in between, with added behind-the-scenes stories of trials, tribulations, controversies, and the burning of witches at the stake of the period. The first half of the historic tour was coming to a close, as the carriage workhorses seemed to pick up their gait as if they knew exactly what awaited them at the livery stable break station. There they would get to bury their heads in buckets of grain, water, and a much-anticipated treat of a small bunch of fresh carrots. The first hour and a half seemed to have flown by. The historic tour was paused, and in 20 minutes, the haunted tour of Old City would commence. The second half of the tour would consist of tales of witches being burnt at the stake, stories of beggars and thieves being beheaded, ghost stories as darkness fell deep into the night of, well, sheer horror. The first part of the tour went well. Confidence grew in the driver's ability to navigate the horse-drawn carriage through narrow, slippery cobblestone streets and to relay the many historic facts of the city in detail was quite impressive. Mr. Creel had proceeded to the Headless Horse Carriage Company's livery stable for the 20-minute mid-tour break, and where the 3-hour tour would ultimately terminate. This location was adjacent to the public rest area on a back street of Liberty Square, where visitors were welcome to use the facility and visit several street vendors whose carts and trucks checkered the small park area, selling their wares, souvenirs, and South Philadelphia favorite refreshments, from South Philly pretzels, roasted peanuts, hot dogs, to cheesesteaks, ice cream, and Italian gelato. The livery stable itself was located at the tip of North American Street and Bodine Street in South Philadelphia, right in Liberty Park. The ladies had, as expected, wanted to use the ladies' room, grab a quick snack if they wished, and complete their prepaid tour. As the ladies were walking to the Italian gelato truck, Carmella suddenly realized that she had left her purse in the ladies' restroom. She told May as she made a quick dash back to the ladies' room, which left May standing at the truck and being handed 2 small cherry gelatos. When just moments later, when Carmella returned without her purse, she took several minutes searching every stall. It was gone. She found a lone cherry gelato resting on a park bench some 14 feet away from the gelato truck. May was nowhere to be seen in the immediate area. Carmella, now feeling a bit nauseous, quizzed the gelato vendor as to his knowledge of May's whereabouts. There was none. Carmella asked if he would keep an eye out for May. He surely remembered serving her. She wanted to check with Mr. Creel back at the waiting carriage, as if she might have gone there to wait for Carmella instead of waiting alone on the park bench. She doubted it because Carmella's gelato was still there on the bench where May had left it. When Carmella reached the carriage, Creel was not there. She thought that perhaps he was at the men's restroom. After a few minutes, Mr. Creel returned to the coach and found a panicking Carmella. When Mr. Creel could add no further information, Carmella really started to panic at that instant. She began to cry and was visibly shaken. She was now seated with her arm across her stomach as she was bent over forward. Carmella asked Mr. Creel to please call the police. As Creel tried to calm Carmella and play off any knowledge of her whereabouts, Creel telling her to relax, she can't be far. Carmella kept insisting and repeating that May would never have left her with, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," she yelled in a loud, out-of-character voice as Creel failed to calm and stall Carmella. He reluctantly dialed the police from a field phone posted in the immediate vicinity. There was no response to her screams into the night, only a chilling echo which bounced off the scattered red brick and brownstone buildings and houses and cobblestone streets of Old City, Philadelphia. As each moment passed, deeper dread was filling the air for Carmella Greystone. For Carmella, the tour was not over until May was found. She knew that her screams could and might be premature, but she didn't care. She just wanted May back. Chapter 5. To hunt the wicked. In very short order, 2 city uniformed cops arrived at the carriage in a blue squad car. Their name tags were missing, and they didn't announce their names. In these times of the 1970s, believe it or not, it was an unspoken police practice to not exhibit your name tag to the public in the event of, say, a Donnybrook breaks out, where the officers are on an assist officer call for a fight or some sort of incident where they might have to bounce their nightstick off someone's head. They would be less likely to be identified for disciplinary action or a lawsuit filed against them if their assistance was appreciated by the officers requesting their help, and their identity was to those who got thumped. It was 1970s. People were all about protesting everything, and the police were in the middle of it all. Their names and badge numbers would appear at the bottom of the police report. The 2 officers exited their cruiser and began interviewing Officer William Waits and Officer James Coslow. They separated Mr. Creel and Carmella and would compare notes afterwards. In short, what they had was a missing adult female. Protocol dictated that there were a 24-hour waiting period before police would engage in a missing persons investigation. What they could do and did do for now, since she was missing from a scheduled event and was a tourist to the city, along with the compelling insistence of Carmella that this was definitely out of character for Dr. Breacher, Officer Coslow radioed dispatch and requested a BOLO, also known as a Be on the Lookout report. He provided a physical description of May, a detailed description of her last known attire, the location in which she was last seen, her accent being of English descent, and that she may be in possession of a carriage ticket with today's date and a single red rose. This BOLO was designed to alert all officers citywide of the missing woman and to alert local police officers in the immediate district to scour the area where May was last seen. The reporting officers obtained contact information on any and all possible witnesses thought to be relevant to the situation in and around the immediate area. The heartbreaking bottom line was for Carmella to hear that until May was missing for a 24-hour period, there was very little more they could do. The only next constructive thing that they would do at this juncture would be to contact the parents of Miss Breacher and inform them that they had filed a missing persons report on their daughter. Inform them that Carmella was safe and they would be bound by protocol to wait 24 hours until they could continue their investigation in the event that May had not been located. This thought alone horrified Carmella, that May's parents would receive a call like this call. The police instructed Mr. Breacher that if he or any family members or anyone else in the interim were to hear from May, to please contact the police department as they left all contact information. The sound of that scenario almost made Carmella faint. However, that was it for now. Since the police department was staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, Officer Waits called into the headquarters and learned that Detective Harry Gavel and Raymond Mash were listed as the 2 duty detectives on call that week for homicide and happened to be at the roundhouse working a homicide case. They had picked up that case the last time that they were first out. They would be named in this report as the detectives to be notified for any follow-up investigation which was launched. Detective Gavel, upon hearing the bolo, radioed Officer Waits and made arrangements for them to keep Carmella and the carriage driver at the scene. Under the missing woman visitor on tour circumstances, Detective Gavel and Mass would ride out to do a quick field interview. This was much welcome news to Carmella Greystone. After her interview with detectives, Carmella asked if they could call and ask the owner of the inn, Mr. Bellingford, if May by some remote chance was there. She was not. Bellingford, being a friend and ex-professor of May, immediately told Carmella to wait exactly where she was. He would leave immediately to pick her up and bring her to the inn. After, he would, together with Carmella, search the streets for May. Mr. Bellingford also called May's parents and assured them that he would help in any way he could, and offered his home for them to stay if they so desired. May's parents decided to be in Philadelphia within the next 24 hours, but first needed to secure a friend of the family to sit their home in Liverpool just in case May were to call home and they not be there to answer. Mr. Breacher spent the next hour and a half on his next-door neighbor's home phone trying to contact or connect with the Philadelphia Police Commissioner, Mayor Frank Rizzo. The mayor and the governor of Pennsylvania, with not much success. The commissioner of police officers did respond sympathetically, stating that more was being done than protocol allowed and that detectives were already assigned and actively working the case. This assurance was welcome news to the Breacher family. However, they only wanted their beloved daughter back home, alive, safe, and unharmed. That was all and everything they wanted. Frank Rizzo's representative, Clarence Bellinger, explained that they all were frustrated by being constrained by the 24-hour wait protocol before the police or FBI could launch an official investigation. They cited that May was an adult. Statistics showed that oftentimes adults go missing for many reasons. A great amount of them return back from the missing, unharmed, with legitimate reason for disappearing. Therefore, resources were not expended until the person or persons were missing for a minimum of 24 hours, and there needed to be cause that foul play was afoot. By the next day, Mr. and Mrs. Breacher arrived at the airport in Philadelphia. They were picked up by Mr. Bellingford and united with Carmella at the inn where May and Carmella had been staying. The minute 24 hours had elapsed, Mr. Breacher was on the phone with the police department. There were no new developments in the matter, and he was assured that the case was actively being investigated and May was in fact listed as a missing person. This fact also caused her information to be added to the NCIC Data Bank, National Crime Information Center. This would disseminate her status as missing all over the nation. Police departments everywhere would receive a teletype of the information, which would be of great value to the investigation. If an officer were to come across May Breacher, dead or alive, he could call the information in and would get a hit out of Philadelphia as her being reported as a missing person. At any rate, a missing person report, and more importantly, the investigation was now underway. Stay tuned for Part 2, Chapter 6 of Pitchfork.